Welcome to today's webinar on Reimagining Performance Management. This is part of AKT's Digital HR Insight series. Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I'll be your webinar organizer today. Okay, let me introduce AKT to those first-time guests. Since 2002, AKT has grown its HR consultancy and HR cloud implementation services with customers across the world. We have more than 150 staff members across several offices in the EMEA region and in India, and together we have achieved 200 and growing SuccessFactors implementations. So before I pass the presentation to our first panelist, I would like to virtually break the ice with all of you to gauge today's webinar room. There we go. If you would, tell us what your main reason for changing performance management is in your organization. Is it to improve employee engagement, perhaps improve company and individual performance, make talent management simple and data-driven, or create a culture of continuous feedback and individual growth, or perhaps it is to align individual goals to your business objectives?
This is Eitan. We see you're voting on your polls, and one of the things that's interesting is that many of you have indicated that the main reason that your organization is looking into making a change in performance management is around creating a culture of continuous feedback. Many of you others have also related to improving company and individual performance and making talent management simple and data-driven. And I think that's very, very much connected to findings we're going to show you and share with you in a few minutes. I think many of you are here because you have a sense, like many people, that everybody hates performance management. One of the things we've seen in the recent few years is that both the professional journals in HR and many of the publications around business have related to, the fact that employees don't like this, managers don't like this, HR doesn't like it, and many, many companies have published recently in the last year or two that they're throwing away performance management, blowing it up, changing it, why year-end reviews are a big fat waste of time, and so on. I'm sure you've seen many of these, and that many executives and managers and employees in your organizations have shared with you this. And it's not all that true that many of these companies have actually completely gotten rid of performance management, but many organizations are thinking about how to change it and feel that their processes are not effective for many of the same reasons you marked in the first poll. And when we asked, when Deloitte asked companies how much they feel that their performance management processes are driving real value, as you can see here, most companies indicated that their processes are not driving real performance. They're not helping develop and provide feedback to people. They're not engaging employees significantly. And they're not an effective use of people's time. And so many organizations are looking at making changes, and that's not a surprise. I'm sure at least some of these reasons are reasons you feel in your organization. One, the timing of processes really doesn't make sense in an agile, fast world. Who said that January or February, if your annual year is January to December, is a good time to do feedback? Organizations in the middle of projects, units may be very busy at exactly that time, but most organizations have an annual cycle that doesn't necessarily really fit the life cycle of employees in their organization. Frequency, most companies still do performance management processes once or twice a year, and we know that that's not sufficient as a real efficient way to provide feedback ongoing and immediate to people. Still, many organizations have some form of forced distribution under the assumption that most units will have great performers, medium performers, and low performers, but that's not exactly true in some organizations, and it's created a lot of struggle and resistance to the process. Most companies' performance management is still very much backward oriented, looking at the past, instead of looking at the future and helping direct people toward what they need to be doing in the future and how they can succeed, instead of summarizing what they did in the past, which the history is gone and it's behind us. Most companies still have the direct manager as the single primary and main assessor of employees, when we know that organizations are actually becoming flat, dispersed, and the direct manager may not actually be the person who sees many of the employees on a daily basis and may not be the best person to assess. definitely not alone. And companies are spending extensive amount of effort around calibration, calibrating their employees, making sure they have the same standards and levels of performance, and that's exhausting. The company spends tons of time on that, and there's a real question of how efficient that is. And these are just a few of the reasons companies report on why the process is just not working for them. And although some companies are experimenting with throwing out performance management completely, we take the position that performance management is not something we should kill. We shouldn't throw the baby away with the bathwater, but that we need to think about how to do it right. And the managing, differentiating, and rewarding of performance is still important. It just needs to be done in a more effective way that meets today's employees, today's organizations, today's technologies. And I personally like Winston Churchill's quote on democracy is the worst form of government, except all those forms have been tried from time to time. In a certain sense, performance management is the same way. It's not ideal. There are a lot of disadvantages, but it's better than some of the other alternatives, like not having anything. And when we look at what the process is trying to do, so we identify what's really important and not what people have been actually doing and are frustrated about, but what are we really trying to achieve, we find that most companies are trying to achieve 5 basic things and not necessarily feel that they're being successful at it. One thing companies are still trying to achieve is ensuring that every person who comes to work knows every day that they're working on the right things, that they know what good results look like and they can focus on doing that, and that as things change, as priorities change, as focus change for their organization, they continuously are able to do that at any given time. And we know that that's not so trivial in organizations today. We also want to make sure, most organizations also want to make sure that each person, once they know what they should be working on, is actually working on it in a professional, efficient, and effective manner, and constantly improving. So they need to be getting feedback, they need to be getting coaching, they need to be getting the right training and support, the right tools and processes to be able to achieve the results that the company wants them to do. A third thing companies are trying to do is to be able to identify different talent populations out of the workforce. So be able to differentiate people who are identified as high performers, as low performers, and maybe other key populations, people with high potential, people with certain skills or capabilities that match the needs of the company in the future, and so on, each company with its own unique needs. Companies are also trying to differentiate reward and compensation elements, whether it's short-term incentive, long-term incentive base, and be able to tie it in one way or another to the performance of people. And companies are also trying to ensure that employees get the right development and growth opportunities, both to enhance their ability to deliver the current work that they're doing in their current jobs, and also, and primarily in these days with the Y generation and millennials in the workforce, to be able to keep them interested in developing toward the next and future things they're going to be doing in their career, hopefully within the organization. So organizations are trying to achieve these, and when we ask clients, is your performance management really helping and effective at doing these things, most of them would say, not at all. That's not what it's doing. It's a bureaucratic process, which is very annoying and not really helping us achieve these things. When we look at what practices are being developed to address that and to be able to deliver the 5 not so simple things we just said, we're seeing things develop in a number of areas. We're seeing a number of principles that are really affecting the way companies are redesigning their performance management. We're seeing how technology is affecting the ability to do things differently and driving new ways of doing things. And we're seeing how design is changing to better adapt to what companies and employees are looking for in these processes. So I want to talk about each of these briefly. One thing is around the frequency, and many of you answered that you want you want to develop a culture that's more frequent feedback and open feedback. And that's a requirement that employees today are looking for. And organizations have to find a way to address that. We also know that people are growing up in the digital age, are used to getting thumbs up, at any given moment, that they are used to having immediate feedback when they post something to their peers and their friends, and Facebook, on LinkedIn, waiting for 6 months or a year to get some kind of response about what I'm doing, it really doesn't make any sense in this day and age. We also know that people trust peer-to-peer platforms like TripAdvisor, like Yelp, like Wikipedia, much more today than they trust a single editor or a single person who is recommending something or assessing something. So many of us go into TripAdvisor when we want to choose a hotel or a restaurant, and don't buy a guidebook anymore with specific recommendations. We believe that the masses know what something good is, and we also should look at how that affects the way we look at people in the organization, and how peer-to-peer review and use of reputation capital within an organization is also something that is similar to that and can be implemented within organizations, and people trust that more than one manager who may be very biased, may be personally connected or not around the review of a person. So we're seeing much more frequent designs in the principle, much more peer-to-peer solutions, and much more transparent solutions in the way things look. We also see that technology is really driving a lot of the things that are happening. So new technology is enabling us to do new things in HR, and new ways of doing things in HR is progressing technology. And we see how cloud and mobile platforms, which make information accessible and easy to use, we see how being connected all the time and simple user experience that's designed to do things simply and quickly and not complicated, how big data and analytics is enabling us to do things we couldn't do before around HR, in general and around HR. So those things are driving a lot of the solutions, and Danny will present a lot of the new functionality and capabilities, and SuccessFactors will show you how technology is enabling us to do things that in the past were just too difficult to do in mass numbers unless you were a really great manager and did the things very naturally. And the other thing that we're seeing in the design companies are doing is that they're simplifying much more of the processes. One of the things we saw over and over again in the past is that companies were trying to do too many things. And I love Dilbert personally. So here's Dilbert saying your user requirements include 400 features. Do you realize that no human would be able to use a product with that level of complexity? So the other person says, good point, I'd better add easy to use to the list. And it doesn't make it easy to use to try to achieve too many objectives. And when we talk to clients, we ask them, what are you trying to achieve in your performance management? And they say all these things. And they say, we want to differentiate, we want to assess employees, we want to engage employees, we want to enforce behavioral competencies, we want to limit legal risk and exposure. And is it a surprise that if we're trying to achieve all these things that it becomes cumbersome and complicated? And so one of the really interesting things that we're seeing companies invest in and think about is how they're segmenting their solutions. So instead of trying to do everything for everyone, to try to do specific things for specific populations. We know that that's true in other areas of HR. Other areas of HR have been segmented for many years. In compensation, for generations, we've had different compensation programs for executives, for sales, for broad-based, for different types of populations in the organization. We don't think that one method of compensating them works for those different populations. In learning and development, we don't think the training for one function or one family or one profession is the same content or approach as others. And we differentiate our learning solutions and our development solutions for different populations, for different jobs in the organization. And all of talent management, by definition, is a segmented approach around selecting specific talent groups and addressing them. Why are organizations in performance management still trying to do one size fits all to cover most of their populations around all those objectives? So one of the key things we've seen is that segmentation needs to be part of the solution around how to make things simple in the future for performance management. So the solutions we're seeing are frequent, they're peer-to-peer, they're transparent, they're using technology. By using segmentation, they're much more simple and focused in design. What does that actually look like? So we've identified 4 different archetypes that organizations are looking at when they're trying to design simple and segmented performance management processes. These aren't the only 4 that exist. There are actually others, but to keep this presentation simple and not go all over the place, we've selected 4 to talk about a little bit. One archetype relates to aligning of goals, aligning of the business objectives so that the people, particularly the people at the top levels of the organization, are really focused on the right things and can adapt as things change.
So echoing what Ethan just said and mentioned, the archetypes or the things that we want to achieve with alignment. So first, let's discuss who are the main key stakeholders in the process. So of course, we have the employee or the appraisee, the person we are talking about, who is the subject of the performance. And we also have management, so direct manager, second level manager, potentially all the management up the chain, up to the CEO. We have metrics manager, who is more taking place today in organizations. It could be the subject matter expert of what I'm doing in my day job, or the person who really manage me on site, assuming my manager is not sitting with me on the same location. We have the direct reports and peers, the people who are reporting to me and the people who reports to the same manager as I do. Of course, as always, HR and OD are there to manage the process, to govern the project. And we also see today some HR analysts or data scientists who is also taking place. And of course, the system administrator is always there. So let's just make sure that we are all aligned on how it looks like. So the employee has a manager and a higher level management. He has his peers. He has his direct reports. He also has a matrix manager and the HR person, the HR business partner. And in SuccessFactors, you can basically set who sees what and when. So I can say that my objective, for example, are only visible to my managers, to my second level managers, to all the managers of the chain, and potentially to my metrics and HR business partner. This is a common practice usually. But some organizations also allow full visibility of objective to all the employees. So potentially even my direct employees and my indirect employees will be able to go to my objective plan and or even to my performance form and really sees everything. This is more achieving a full visibility throughout the stream approach. But let's drill a bit about what is goal cascading and goal pooling. So goal cascading is basically taking an objective and pushing it down the stream to my employees. Okay, so it could be one objective or more than one being cascaded down or pushed down to my direct reports. Okay, it is not necessarily the same objective. So it could be if I need to deliver a good project, my direct reports need to build a good infrastructure and to have a good QA of the project. Okay, so it's really connecting those two objectives, but I have my objective and my objective is connected to the other one of my direct reports. On the other hand, there's also cascade pooling. So some organizations allow me to see my manager's objective, and potentially I can go to my direct manager objective and say, dear manager, you need to sell in $100. Let me help you. I will take one of the objectives and will push it down to me. I will help you and I will sell $30. Okay. So this is a more approach of giving the employees the option to go to their manager objective and to really pull it down to their objective as well. And we also have goal alignment, which is basically taking two objectives. It could be not necessarily within the hierarchy, and just aligning those so they will be connected together. The more interesting part today is the group goals and team goals. So group goals is something that is used mainly for visibility. Those are not objectives that I will be evaluated directly. So for example, if I have a big grocery store, the objective of the grocery manager is to sell 100 tons of bread, okay? And the cashier on the end, in the lower part of the organization, okay, he doesn't really contribute to this objective. He doesn't really have, you know, the span of control to say to customers, please buy that, to put more bread on the shelf and things like that. And he cannot control it. So A more common example could be like EBITDA, net income. Not all the employees necessarily contribute to this same objective, but potentially they are all being measured upon. So it will be affecting their bonuses, for example, or their merits. So we do want to achieve visibility. So it's one objective that is visible throughout all the population that we want to have. It really works very similar to goal cascading, but again, the owner of the objective will be only the direct manager in this example, who pushes it down to all the employees that are relevant. The second part, which is a lot more used today, is team goals. So potentially I have a team of 10 salesperson, and I really want to have to tell them, guys, you all have the same goal, okay? Each one of you will be measured individually. So each one of you needs to sell 10 units. Maybe one of you will sell 5, one of you will sell 7, the other will sell 10. But this is the same objective for all of you. This is basically like a copy-paste of all the objectives to a bigger population. Keep in mind, this will not create a goal on my goal plan, okay? Not like the group goals. Group goal is my objective, being visible to other. Team goals, I'm creating the goal. It will sit on the other person objective plan. Something new that came in recently is the initiative. So I use like the stars on the side. Initiatives are not goals, first of all. These are more company-wide things that we want to achieve. So it could be like focusing on your customer, achieving a great customer experience. So it could meet different people in different roles in your organization in trying to achieve different things. So it could be potentially, I need to sell better, and other people need to have better product, and marketing should have a better marketing. So we can all connect our objective to those initiatives. So let's drill down to the system a bit. So this is a goal plan for those of you who never saw it. And you can have more than one goal plan per employee. And I will start by adding a new objective. So the first thing the system will ask me, assuming that I have the correct permissions, is whether I want to create a personal objective, which is a regular objective. I can also select from a library, which is heavily used in our customers, and we have the group objective, like we just mentioned. So for a library objective, I can just group it down by categories, like HR, administration, it could be whatever categories that you want. And then I will have a set of goals that the employees who are setting the objectives, or the manager who are setting the objective, can select from and really decide which objectives they want to use. Just select them and assign them to themselves. The other option is to create a group goal, as you can see on the lower part of the screen, and just assign it to different people. So by choosing the group goal, clicking on assign, I will just choose the people who I want to assign this group goal, and those are all will be pushed down to them to be visible. The last part is the team objective. So assuming, again, it's a matter of permission to who can set the team objective and to whom. So potentially I cannot set a group objective to all the company if I'm not allowed to, only to my specific team or to the specific person that I have the option to push team goals to. So team objective, you just creating those and then clicking on assign. So you can see here, this is a team goal. We created some goals. And now I need to assign it, very similar to the way I did with group goal. I can just click on the person that I want to align it to, and those objectives will be set on his objective plans. The last part is initiative. So when I create an objective, on the lower part of the screen, you will see the initiative part, okay? So this is just an example, and of course I can have different initiatives to different population within the organization. So customer focusing could be only for sales and marketing, but it will not be to manufacturing and R&D, for example. And in this way, we can create different initiatives. And from the other end, from the admin perspective, you can see which goals of each person are connected to which initiative. And of course, an objective could be connected to more than one initiative. So adopt the customer first approach and provide innovation to our customer could both be connected to my goal. Handing it back to Eitan.
Engage is around continuous performance management. It's really engaging to workers. It isn't short-term goals. It's very focused on development and creating a dialogue. So when we're talking about engage, and we're now diving into the engage archetype, we're really talking about how to create a solution in performance management, which is really much more focused on the, addressing the speed, the expectations, the open feedback, the continuous nature of a dynamic workforce. That is looking at feedback and coaching is something that has to happen all the time. It's part of the basic managerial role. That is much more adept to constant change, to making sure that people are always know what they should be working on and working on the right things and getting the feedback to doing that well. Is focused on growth, so it's a growth mindset approach, and it is recognizing achievement all the time and not just once a year or twice a year. And when we talk about engage, we're seeing 5 key design principles that most organizations who are doing this well are finding to be very valuable. One is rich content. So it's not just about filling in a specific type of form. It's not just about rating people on a few scales. It's really about enabling a mix of type of content, sometimes very simple, sometimes very complicated, but not just numbers, but also ensuring that there's real feedback. There's information about behaviors, around processes. It's full of evidence and real world. Some of that's documented. A lot of it can be verbal. But what people want to know is they really want to understand their performance and not just rate it. So rating and ranking, which was very focused in the past on just giving numbers, doesn't give that kind of rich content and feedback that people expect and want to have today. A second aspect is looking at peer-to-peer or any other kind of multi-assessor approach. So living under the assumption that not only the direct manager and maybe the indirect manager should provide feedback, but multiple people in the organization, even to a degree that anyone in the organization can be able to provide feedback. That feedback could be given upon request, so an employee can ask for feedback from different people in the organization, or it can be given by the initiation of the feedback giver, because you're working on multiple teams, you're working with different managers in the organization. We know that most people don't do this naturally, and so it's an issue of encouraging and learning to do it. And so most organizations start with simple things that are very, very simple as like, or as simple as an emoji. But then it's slowly, as people learn how to do this and participate in this process, to start providing more richer feedback than just a simple thumbs up or a simple smiley. We know that employees are really concerned, and you mentioned it too in the poll, with negative feedback. It's a lot easier to give positive feedback than to give negative feedback, and we see organizations often starting with positive, only ways of doing this positively versus negative, so peer recognition. Many of you use LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, you can recognize that someone has a certain capability. You can't say bad things about them. Maybe you can write text, but you can, but a very simple click of a button, you can mark capabilities that people have and endorse someone for a specific skill. If someone has 100+ endorsements of a specific skill, that's a pretty good indication that they're good at it. And it enables people to build reputation capital, something that we find very important in organizations. The skill of having a positive reputation, people want to work with you, is as important as the skills themselves within organizations. So having people think about who I appreciate, who I want to work with, who's getting positive feedback from many of their peers in the organization, internal customers, is very important to drive. We know that continuous feedback has to be frequent and immediate. It has to be easy to do anytime, all the time. It has to be, whether it's pull or push, it needs to be when needed, from the manager, from the employee. Employee can ask for feedback, manager can provide it when they feel that there's been an event or some specific information they want to provide. And one of the things that enables that is mobile devices. Mobile makes it simple and easy, and we see how traffic in Facebook has been driven so much more, and in general and the internet has been driven so much more by mobile devices and mobile access. The same thing is true about making this simple and easy and accessible. We know that the system, the technology, is not everything. In the end, the processes need to design in a way that there's real quality dialogue. That means training managers. That means enabling time. It means creating the culture to have discussions. It's not just about the system, but also there are things in the way we design the system, the process, the feedback, the information, which is important to support dialogue. And we might see some of that. And one of the really critical things is that companies are looking much more at looking forward than looking backward. Of course, you're analyzing people's performance up to date, but it's in a way, and it's about how you talk about what to do with that information moving forward. It's how that information becomes supportive of forward-looking, forward-focused. And we're talking about, instead of feedback, companies are even talking about feed forward as a language to use, which indicates talk about things that happened in the past, but mostly spend most of the time not about analyzing the past, but about thinking about how you can use this information to be better in the future. Okay, so much more coaching, positive learning, growth approach into the way information is delivered and feedback is given.
So in order to answer the design principle that Eitan just mentioned, so the SAP SuccessFactors has launched Continuous Performance Management, or CPM, almost a year and a half ago. And it's really a new approach on how we're doing performance management. This is less the formal, full, long form with steps and workflows and things like that. This is a lot more quick to do, access by mobile, friendly user, etc. But let's talk about the design principle that is built in. So it's mainly about, you can connect it also to your goal plan. So if you have and some of our customers doing a touch base every 6 months. So if you have a yearly objective or a 6-month objective of delivering a good project, so you can also now in continuous performance break it down to smaller activities that you will touch base every week or every month. So for example, in order to help my employee to deliver a good project, I will tell you, please, dear employee, your first activity in January is to build a new project plan. On February, to launch a kickoff plan. On March, to establish the team, and so on and so forth. The second approach is mainly about helping manager to provide coaching to their employees. So you can allow not just to break down the goals and say what you need to do and when, but also to achieve a better coaching. So tell their employees, okay, we are now summarizing January. I think you did this very well, and I think that you should do this a bit better, okay? So it's not just meeting once a year talking about your things that you need to improve or the things that you need to, that you did very well. It's also about helping them to get a continuous coaching. So we talked a bit about better project tracking, because you can really capture and track the activities and also achievements throughout the time, and I will explain what are achievements in a few seconds. And you can have a clear visibility, because the continuous performance is always open. It's just not just a 1 week or 1 month meeting that you are scheduling with your employees. It's also something that is always available and always open, so you can get continuous feedback and continuous update from your employees on the project tracking. And also to have a structure and meaningful one-to-one discussion. It means that we all know what we need to talk about in our one-on-one. There's a structure, there's capturing, there's the option to really go back in time to all those meetings and to make sure what happened throughout the time, that maybe we missed something, and so on and so forth. And of course, as I mentioned before, this is completely mobile friendly. It actually looks even better on mobile than on the computer, in my opinion. And you can have this continuously accessible to everybody. And more than that, even if you have employees that are not computer users, and today everybody has a mobile and a smartphone, they can also get continuous performance, which was also available, but a lot less comfortable to do for a full performance form in the past. So let's talk about how it looks. So I'm Paulo on the left upper side, so I have my own continuous performance, but I also have my team, in this case, my direct reports. And now I'm looking on Sylvia, one of my employees, and she has her activities. So I asked her to create a slide pack, and I asked her to create an estimated cost for the new project. And I see here that Sylvia also applied. Hi, Paulo, I need your help to support in that. I'm not aware of all the details. So we can have like a chat-like on the activities to make sure everything is happening even between our weekly meeting or our monthly meeting. I can also see here on the date on the upper part, 21st of October, I can scroll back in time and to see all our previous meeting and to make sure all the other activities were completed, if anything was missed, if anything needs to come back to, and things like that. The second part is achievements. So once we have completed an activity, and even if this activity is connected to a goal plan or not, we can celebrate the achievement. So if I did a nice presentation as part of my activities, I can write it down as an achievement, and those achievements will be appearing in the annual form as well. So if I had a one-year project, then my manager could go ahead and to see that in January I delivered a good presentation, on February I did a very good project, and so on and so forth. So all those achievements will help him understand that he should give me a better performance score on the end of the year. The third part, which is really nice, is the peer-to-peer evaluation. So it's not the 360 that part of you know from performance. It's a lot less formal, and it's the option to provide feedback. So you can ask feedback from anybody in the company or in your organization, and you can see in this example. So Paolo said, since you worked with Sylvia on create a slide pack or on a specific activity, I would like to get your feedback. Please let me know what you think about her. And then Paulista, in this case, the person that I asked for feedback, will write down what he thinks, and this will be also available in the continuous performance and also on the performance form. One comment I do want to add, so activities in continuous performance could be linked, they're not mandatory to be linked, but it is possible to link them to an objective plan, to a goal within your goal plan. And also for those customers who are using succession and career development, so it could also be linked to a career development goal. So I can say that you have 5 activities, 3 of them connected to your goals, and 2 of them are to your potential growth in the organization, your development plan.
Empower is around creating immediate feedback and making it gamified. So we're seeing in many populations that are very measurable, call centers, sales, help desk, services, that it's possible to design very different ways of performance management that are very fun. They're immediate feedback. They connect performance with learning and performance support systems. Very, very different than what we think about when we think about an annual form.
So about empowering, so as Aishan mentioned, we are talking about more on a big mass of employees that we want to really engage into our organization. Not necessarily they are using a computer, not necessarily they even have a mobile sometimes. And we do want to have them more engaged, and we don't want to have like a full cycle, setting objective, initiating forms, things like that. Think about, for example, a cashier in a big retail store. So you won't tell them every month this is your objective, but you want to give it a more gamified option. So we are presenting here an example from another platform called Game Effective. And in this example, you can see that for my team, we were having a car race. Okay, the race is not really driving a car, is by achieving a set of KPIs. So for example, revenue, lead conversion rate, lead response time, CRM quality, whatever. So if I will go back to the example of the cashier, if you will sell more milk, you will get more points, for example, versus selling bread. Or as much as a bigger revenue that you will achieve in the end of the day, you will increase your sale, you will increase your race in the organization. And race could be individual, and it could also be versus other teams, or versus people within my team and things like that. So I can always see that here the average team really sells a lot more than I do currently, and I'm behind. And from that moment on, it's not only that I'm behind, I can also initiate small activities. So if I'm not selling good, could have a quick learning video tell me how to sell better. So it's not an official training, come to your class and do it, but more like a 5 minutes demo, 5 minutes movie on how to sell better this product. Okay, or if I'm not familiar with, if I'm not selling well milk, so 5 minutes video on what is the advantage of drinking milk, for example. And more than that, you can have leaderboards, and you can also have contests. So you will get scores, and the people who will get the higher score will get coins. It's not real coins necessarily. And you can also have a shop of how you want to really use those coins. So for example, you can say whoever will win this competition will get a movie theater ticket. He will get a free parking lot in our offices for a week. He will get a special VIP parking lot near the CEO for a week. Things like that, which are less money consuming, and they're a lot more engaging. So it could be really, really small things that you want to publish in your virtual store inside this platform, and allowing your employees to really leverage the coins or the points that they are receiving after performing well.
Of our archetypes, which we call differentiate, okay, which is really around getting to some form of differentiation of employees, not necessarily one rating or one ranking, which is what maybe used to exist, not necessarily forced distribution, which is what used to exist, but still understanding how we want to differentiate employees, on what parameters we want to know who sticks out, both positive or negative on different things, and how do we enable that in a way that's simple and fast and easy and not bureaucratic and flexible. And a lot of the articles we included in the handouts, which I really recommend you read some of these, are still, showing the merit and the value of organizations having a good understanding of their workforce, having a good understanding of their talent, having a better understanding and a richer understanding of who their people are, and what capabilities, skills, motivations, growth potential, interests their people have. And so differentiate is really about helping the organization identify those key things around employees, have a good organizational picture, and be able to use that information for different processes, whether it's talent, moving people around, addressing key business issues, compensating them, and so on. So the objective is really here to find those people. So if I skip to what, there's a lot of evidence that this is still important, that organizations still want to be able to differentiate so they can make decisions, that strong people want to work in organizations that recognize the best people and differentiate them, that strong performers leave organizations that don't identify strong people, that don't differentiate on pay, that don't recognize great, exceptional behavior, and that weaker performers will often not select organizations that are more aggressive about this, or discover that it's too hard for them to survive in organizations that actually do this, and so they self-select themselves out, even if the organization doesn't necessarily do that. We are looking at much richer ways of assessing people. So one of the things I'm seeing in many of the organizations and a lot of the research is, instead of looking at one rating or one number, is organizations are trying to create a picture that's much richer. It may not even consolidate multiple assessed items into one, because you don't need one number. With all the big data capability and ability to do analytics around people and maintain all this people and technology, organizations are actually creating a much richer profile around their people, and they can use that information for different needs in different situations. The design principles we're seeing organizations doing when designing their differentiation and calibration processes are these. One, making it a lot simpler and quicker for managers to do. Historically, managers used to go in form by form, employee by employee, rate a lot of numbers, then maybe go back and forth, see what I rated different managers and so on. The technology through visualization, through making things very, very simple, and Daniel will show how SuccessFactors does that, make it a lot easier for managers to rate different parameters for multiple people in a way that's very natural and easier for them to do. A second item is ensuring that that the way that people are rated and assessed is much more fair, consistent, and unbiased. That's done through technology, and Danny, I hope you're going to relate a little bit to that, but also to the way the information is presented, the way the definitions of the different levels of competency or behavior are defined, so that we ensure that different managers are more consistent in their ratings and there's much less bias in the way managers rate people. It's also critical that this process is linked to other processes. When ranking and rating of any kind or any kind of calibration is just standalone and not linked directly into other processes in a simple and easy way, then it just creates multiple work and difficult things. And of course, SuccessFactors Talent Suite is designed particularly to create the integration between the performance processes, the differentiation and calibration processes, and other HR-related processes, and Danny will show a lot of that. And one of the really critical things is understanding what is actionable in communication. Assuming that a company has solutions like Engage that we described, where employees are getting continuous feedback in a growth mindset, not necessarily everything that happens in the differentiation module needs to be communicated to employees. And then there's an opportunity, you're actually giving feedback and growing people one way and collecting information to drive performance, to drive decisions and other things in another way. And the question is what needs to be communicated in what way, what information, and not necessarily needs to be everything. Although in transparency, we know that it makes sense that many of the things will be communicated, but communicated in an actionable way so an employee knows how to take that information and do something with it, again, to grow and develop.
Okay, so for calibration and differentiation. So first of all, as I then mentioned, it should be fair, consistent, tightly linked to your other HR processes, not necessarily performance, but also to talent, to promotions, to succession planning, and so on. And it should be really simple and quick. So I will show you some examples from within the tool. And I will start with I think the most used one, which is the performance calibration. So you can always set a bell curve or whatever curve that you want, saying this is the distribution. You can see here on the gray, on the dark blue, those are the guidelines of our organization. And on light blue, this is the actual of the sixth person that I'm managing. And you can see here that I'm not necessarily sitting according to the guidelines. And if I want, I can drill down to the performance overview and to see how my 6 people are spread out throughout the distribution. And it's not just a nice visualization, it's also actionable. So I can really drag and drop, for example, Eduardo here, from outstandings to needs development, okay? And once I will do this drag and drop of person, it will automatically update the chart that you saw before until I will be able to set all my population under the guidelines. So again, 6 people is not the best example, but think about when you're trying to do a calibration to 100 people and you're really trying to put them on a bell curve, it's a lot more easier to do that like this. But this is the easiest one. This is the one-dimensional. Let's talk about when you want to compare 2 dimensions. For example, performance versus potential, impact of loss versus risk of loss, performance versus compensation, things like that. So SuccessFactors can support you on that as well. And to really have a 9-box of all your people sitting in those areas. And again, this is an actionable, so you can sit with all your board of HR people or your senior management and to really discuss on all the people, say, okay, this person we already talked, it's okay, he's excellent, he's a star. But this other guy, I don't know, I don't think that he's excellent. Maybe we should lower him to medium or to a solid contributor, for example. And once we will finish all this calibration session and we can also have approval on that, okay, only then the information will be published into the employee profile and will be able to assist us in making a better decisions in some of our processes. So we can always know who are our stars, who are the bigger potential risk of loss, and how we really want to take those people, for example, and create them a special plan to make sure they are nurtured and they are not leaving our company. One point that I do want to mention, business beyond bias. So this was a big issue last year, but it is available on the system. So you saw on the left side how we can create a calibration session, but we can also have some alerts on bias, and we can also have flawless calibration. So if you really want to make sure that the calibration is really honest and decent, we can make sure that a picture will not appear, and we can also see, for example, in this one, the distribution between male and female, so we can make sure that females are being paid correctly in the organization and are not like making less money from men, for example. And same for ethnicity, for every other information that you want to really make sure that you are making a good calibration without any bias. By the way, on the left side, you can see that, for example, this is the third year that this guy has been mentioned as a star, although his performance is not really that good. So why are we keep telling to the organization he's a star and he's not really fulfilling his potential? Another option to do a calibration or a small side-by-side comparison is a team rater or team ranker. And this is an easy way to really see my people side by side and to give them scores on specific competencies. And you can see also on the right, so it will align the people according to their score. And it's an easier tool in case you have a lot of employees reporting to you. So if you have 50 employees, it's a lot more harder to really remember that I gave somebody a 5, although I gave another person a 4, but basically they are the same performance. Okay, so maybe it's not a good way to give the other person a 4. So we can really have a side-by-side comparison, which is very easy to use and also really helpful to managers to see when they have a bigger staff of people. So I'll bring it back to Eitan for the 4 archetypes and conclusions.
These and others can be very, very different in the way the functionality and the design of them look. And I think one of the critical things is looking at segmentation, looking at very simple and focused objectives for different populations, and then leveraging the technology in a way that it makes the specific process for that specific population as simple, as easy, and as leveraging technology as possible. So we're out of time. We hope you enjoyed this hour with us. We enjoyed it with you. We'll be happy to be in touch.